Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cliniva's first webinar, Profit from Prevention, Rethinking Workplace Healthcare. For those joining us for the first time, Cliniva is a Kenyan women's healthcare startup. We provide high-quality, affordable healthcare with a patient-centered, holistic approach. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. My name is Augusta Truesdale, and I'm very excited to be moderating today's event. Employees are a company's greatest asset, and investing in their well-being is a sure way to guarantee long-term success at both an individual and company-wide level. Today, our speakers will discuss the potential for wellness programs to improve not only employee health, but also productivity while reducing long-term healthcare spend and employee turnover. We'll be exploring the practicalities of implementing wellness programs, as well as concerns about diversity and inclusion within the wellness space. We'll also be running a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to leave any questions for our speakers in our LinkedIn Live comments section. Now, on to today's speakers. First, I'm honored to introduce Cliniva's founder and CEO, Yulia Sidorova. Yulia has previously worked across sub-Saharan Africa with McKinsey and Pharma, and she brings her years of management consulting and leadership to today's conversation. Our next speaker is Martin Githaiga, head of people at Kenyan insurtech firm Turaco. Martin got started in HR through management consulting and has been involved in the Kenyan startup ecosystem for over 10 years. Our last speaker is Shirley Omari, an award-winning HR professional and career coach. One of Kenya's top 20 disruptors of 2023, Shirley is devoted to talent development and operational excellence. Without further ado, let's learn about the returns workplace wellness programs can create for your company. We'll begin with the first theme, return of investment on wellness programs. Shirley, the first question is for you. How can organizations measure the ROI of their workplace wellness programs?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here today to learn and just share in this conversation. I think it's very dear to me because I think employee wellness and employee engagement is something that's very, very deep to me. Of course, I'll get to that later. So when I speak about, when you talk about return on investment, I'd like to think a bit about it from different aspects. So, there are various metrics to measure return on investment. So it's for an organization to decide how are we going to measure the return on investment. Is it going to be based on the satisfaction we have on employees? Is it going to be based on the productivity that we have? So it can be very extensive. So it can be coming from the goals that the organization has. Maybe it could be retaining employees, or it could be increasing satisfaction. So that is how I can say we can measure return on investment when it comes to healthcare strategies.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Martin, we were hoping to hear from you as well. Is there any specific example that you, with your experience at a fast-growing fintech company, Turaco, can reference when speaking about how investing in wellness programs has positively impacted your business?
Yeah, thanks, Augusta. And thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. Again, employee wellness is at the center of making everything work at the organization. For me, an employee who's doing well, an employee who's healthy, an employee who's happy at work is one who's also feeling good as they do their job. And to that context, what's the return on investment? And I'll reference my examples to Turaco. I think the first practical example on return on investment has been on our culture. So one of two of our values at Turaco is have fun, and the second one is care and protect. Both of those values, in a way, speak to wellness at Turaco. On the care and protect side, over and above caring and protecting for our customers, we also are keen on caring and protecting our internal customers, our staff. And then The other bit is have fun. The other value is have fun. We believe in work being work is a third of your day, so it's not something that you essentially are supposed to endure, but something that you're supposed to enjoy and make part of your and makes part of a wholesome part of you. And for that reason, our value is that you should at least enjoy what you're doing at work, get challenged in the work that you're doing it in an environment that is calm, that is inviting, that is stress-free. So having a fun environment where you're able to be present at work, comfortable while working, not looking over your shoulder all the time, feeling confident as you work. That's what that value speaks to. That's the first ROI. Those two values have translated in a culture that is amazing at Rako in terms of how we're able to let people enjoy their work, let people feel confident while working and do their job without too much pressure. So it becomes part of their life and helps in making their life a bit more wholesome and enjoyable. The second ROI that's more practical now in terms of wellness is the way we see our healthcare benefits, the way we look at our healthcare and overall wellness benefits. We try as much as possible to provide healthcare across the board, and that typically looks like us being able to provide healthcare as a benefit to everybody in the organization. However long or short your contract terms are, however senior or junior role your role is, how big or small your family is. So providing very holistic healthcare benefits. That's how the other way that we've been able to provide a benefit. And then the ROI there is you have less time lost on people not being at work. You have specific outcomes in terms of people being healthy and being able to go seek medical help and get back to work quickly. And then in addition to that, you also have a really engaged team, a really happy team, because they have one less thing to worry about. So those are some of the exact ROIs that I can speak to right now.
Thank you, Martin. That's very insightful. That actually leads us right to Yulia. The healthcare perspective is so valuable, and of course, Yulia, you come from this perspective. So, can you speak about how, from the healthcare perspective, how investing in wellness creates returns for organizations?
Absolutely, yeah. So when we engage with companies in Kenya and with the corporate ecosystem, what we see a lot is that sadly there are very few CHROs like Martin, for example, right? So most companies and most HR teams still see corporate wellness healthcare benefits as a nice extra, or as something of a luxury expense, rather than something that is an investment that brings a clear ROI. And so what we see is that a lot of education is usually needed here because evidence shows otherwise. Healthcare benefits and a well-designed wellness program at the workplace is actually one of the highest ROI investments in the whole HR toolbox. And there are, many companies globally that have demonstrated that. So data show that ROI can range anywhere in between $3 to $10 for every dollar spent. That's a really high return on investment. And in terms of how successful companies measure that, it's a lot of the things that both Martin and Shirley already mentioned. So it's some of the things around productivity, whether it's direct productivity, so how much each of your team members can achieve, or it's less absenteeism, for example, which can be very costly to a lot of companies. It's also a really important investment for talent attraction and retention. And we are now living in the world where everyone competes for the best talent. So healthcare benefits are really important here. And then recruiting cost, as we all know, and cost of employee churn can also be quite high. And then another way to look at it is if you have a comprehensive healthcare cover, for instance, then really investing in prevention and wellness can significantly decrease the total healthcare costs, because you will have fewer hospitalizations, fewer C-sections, for example, and also would be able to just get better premiums on your insurance covers if that's something that you have. All that said, in order to achieve that ROI, it's really important to have the right wellness program that works for your organization. So here, both the design of the program and the implementation are really critical. And some of the mistakes that we see companies make in the design stage is actually just taking a healthcare or wellness program off the shelf and not really thinking about how to align them with business goals. And if a workplace wellness program is not fully aligned with the business goals, whatever they are, whether it's revenue growth or decreasing cost or improving customer service, for example, then that program will fail by definition. It's very vulnerable and will not bring a lot of results in the long term. So what we see successful companies do is, beyond just thinking and measuring ROI, they start with their business goals and then see how some of the workplace programs can improve them. So as an example, if the nature of your business is something high stress with a lot of difficult customer conversations, then investing in the mental health aspect can help achieve those business goals. If it's something in manufacturing that, for example, requires a lot of physical work, and there a lot of the risks can come with employees not being, fit physically or being able to quickly respond to some physical risks, then the physical aspect is critical for those business goals. So that business goal alignment is critical. And then, of course, the implementation part as well. The other thing that I would like to emphasize is that ROI can be very high. But most of the highest ROI interventions actually take time, right? So they won't be realized within a week or a month. It usually takes at least several months or a year to get that return. So it's really important to think about what are some of the quick wins that we can implement in the workplace to demonstrate that quick return on investment, while you're rolling out some of the longer term strategies.
Yulia, thank you so much for your insights. So that was the first theme, ROI of workplace wellness programs. If any of our viewers have any questions for our speakers about that, please just add it to the LinkedIn Live comment section. But that leads us very well to our second theme, which is the role of mental health in wellness and well-being. Yulia touched on this, of course, is that you have to cater the wellness program to the type of business that you do. So luckily, we have a speaker here who works in a very high pressure sector, that is the fintech sector. Martin, we would like to hear from you. How can organizations such as yours create a culture that promotes mental health awareness and resilience among employees? And what outcomes can they expect to see?
Great, thanks, Augusta. Yeah, you're very right. The kind of startup and fintech workspace is high pressure. Things are changing often and changing quickly. And to even give you some more context, often as knowledge workers, we tend to forget that one of the parts of the body that are working the hardest is our minds. Our minds are working the hardest at that point. As a knowledge worker or as somebody who is doing your work through your computer, there's a lot of mental space being taken in, and because it might not be as visible as any other work, then we tend to neglect taking care of that part of the body, our mental health. So in terms of how this would look like, investing in mental health, how it looks like once it's a success story. My context comes in terms of creating the type of work environment you create, and then also the kind of interventions you use. So my first example is around the work environment. The quickest way to build on stress and mental fatigue is an environment that is surrounded by a lot of stressors. So, micromanagement, extreme micromanagement, things, a work environment that is preoccupied by so many other small things aside from the main work or the work that that person is doing. Working in a state of fear, in a state of concern, lack of security around your work. You're always worried about what the next day will look like. Those are stressors. Those are things that build on creating a situation with your mental health. And once that work environment continues to be that way for a long time, it slowly creeps in, and you'll be dealing with unhealthy stuff. But they may not be unhealthy physically as you're looking at them, but they're mentally unwell. A great work environment where the biggest concern a colleague should have is their day-to-day work and how their work is panning out, and getting challenged and getting new things to work on and interesting work, exciting work. Those are less stressors, and they are more actually motivators. Reduce on the stressors. Make sure that you're giving some level of autonomy to your team, to your staff, to your colleagues. Make sure you're delegating really well with setting expectation timelines that are reasonable, and all that works towards building a work environment that is good for mental health. The outcome for that is a happier team, a team that is more engaged, a team that is still thinking more about your vision and the mission of the business, and what the business actually wants to achieve, as opposed to other things on the side that might be distractions. The last bit is on some interventions that I have seen work really well. Typically, I like calling them light touch interventions that do not necessarily require someone to move away from their work, get fully distracted from their work. We have mental health applications. We have mental health digital tools that one can use to keep in check of how they're doing, how their mental well-being is going. And these are some of the areas that people functions or people HR departments can invest in, putting some budget in such initiatives, in such programs, that will ensure that someone as they are working, they're having a way to de-stress themselves. They're having a way to just check in and see that things are going well. And then lastly, even aside from those regular investing in those digital interventions, just a work environment where somebody can easily reach out to their direct manager, easily reach out to someone that they can speak to about a concern that they're having with their health or how they're feeling, a sounding board, Those are things that can quickly be set up in the organization. Just have somebody who you can speak to constantly just make sure that you're feeling well. The outcome of that is a really happy, fulfilled, and engaged staff member. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Martin, for those insights. I would love to hear more about this, the role of mental health from the HR perspective. So Shirley, can you tell us more about how HR professionals and career coaches can integrate mental health considerations into their wellness programs?
Sorry, could you kindly repeat the question?
For sure. Shirley, how can HR professionals and career coaches best integrate mental health considerations into their wellness programs?
Yeah, so I like to look at it like just recently I was thinking how health should be a basic need for employees. So for coaches and HR professionals, of course, there's the policy aspect and addressing barriers to do with maybe cost and just making it a priority for it to be added into programs. So I wouldn't speak much about it, but I'd say I think it's more of just understanding that it's a basic need now and going over and above just it being, giving employees health insurance, making it a wellness program and integrating it into the culture of the company. So making it very strategic in the sense that our company really cares about, the employee wellness of everyone. So then it becomes sort of, a culture aspect where you're approaching it very strategic, where it's not only on a budgetary end, but also on a culture perspective. So that's how I can say HR professionals and coaches can, integrate it into the companies. Yeah.
Definitely, Shirley, the culture perspective is so important. Yulia, maybe you can expand on this a little bit more on how companies can actually adopt or what innovative strategies companies can adopt to address mental health in their wellness programs.
Sure. So a lot of the things Martin actually mentioned, where we see a lot of mental health strategies and approaches go wrong is the lack of understanding what the actual needs of your organizations are, because mental health is a very broad space. You can argue it's much broader than physical health. And is also something that's less researched with fewer healthcare pathways, right? And the range of problems can really vary from anxiety and stress to much more serious conditions that need to be treated by a specialist in a medical setting. So it's really important to start with proper understanding of what we mean by mental health within the context of our organization. And we see innovative, successful companies start with that understanding. The easiest way to do that is probably surveys. And I have seen quite a few companies having either a separate healthcare mental health pulse questionnaire. It's important to do that confidentially, of course, or integrating it within the general employee pulse engagement survey as well. There are a lot of resources available online that can help design that, but it's really critical. So if you are, as an HR professional, at a stage where mental health is still just a general problem or a buzzword, you understand the importance and the need, but can't really have you don't have the data behind what are the actual concerns of your team. It's really, really important to invest in that understanding. So either through a survey or through confidential one-on-one interviews, for example, with the team members. That's a really important step. And then, as Martin mentioned, there's a wide range of solutions. And the solutions really vary. ineffectiveness and cost effectiveness, but also what exactly they address. So once you have that understanding, for example, if you know that the biggest problem is actually work-related anxiety because you deal with a lot of difficult customers, then you need to look for solutions that address that. Or if you see that you have a large share of female population who then have mental health problems related to either pregnancy, for example, or menopause, or some specific women's health issues, then the solution should be targeted to that. And so in terms of what solutions we are seeing companies implement, it's really a range, which can start with, for example, a more traditional set of therapy sessions that can be quite effective for specific issues, to digital apps, for instance. And as Martin mentioned, from Taraco experience, they can be quite effective. The problem here is that it's a space difficult to navigate. So even if you just open the App Store, there are probably over 100,000 mental health apps available. So how do you navigate that? And if you really understand what your problem is and what your goals are, it becomes then much easier to look for the right solution, and then get some recommendation of what actually works. But some of these mental health apps can be very, very cost effective, and also be very effective in eliminating the engagement problem, because mental health is still under huge stigma, and so the confidentiality part of the app can really help solve that. Mental health is also sometimes something that goes beyond just healthcare and wellness. And so in our difficult times, we also see that financial stress is something that is the main reason for high stress levels. So tools like webinars on financial literacy can also be quite effective here. But again, you need to start with understanding. As Martin also pointed, the whole culture and manager training is really critical. And what we've seen successful companies do is invest in manager training, but not in a way where you want to turn the manager into a therapist or make them kind of get them to a level where they can diagnose a depression or anxiety. It's a training where the manager becomes more of a champion of using your mental health solutions, can really help navigate the tools, can escalate issues, can point their team towards the right content rather than become a therapist, which is something that is quite dangerous and probably not very effective. And then one other thing that we've also seen innovative forward companies do is look outside the healthcare space and look outside the doctor's office. A lot of what influences mental health is, for example, work schedules, being able to work remotely, or just general culture in your organization. And some of the most effective intervention are actually there. So again, try to understand where the problems are and see where, for example, like adjusting your work schedules can eliminate a lot of stress. Or if you have, for example, a setting where culture or microaggressions, for instance, are still an issue, this is where we need to start to really promote that mental health culture in the company.
Thank you so much, Yulia. That leads us to our next theme, which is diversity and inclusion in wellness. We've spoken a lot today about how employees are our greatest asset, and about the reason that many companies are looking to implement wellness programs is because they're looking to find the best and brightest of all their employees and much of that is in creating and maintaining a diverse, inclusive workforce. So with that being said, I would love to hear from our speakers more about how we can keep up the mental well-being of that diverse workforce. Shirley, my first question is for you. How does creating an inclusive and diverse wellness program contribute to the overall well-being and success of employees from various backgrounds?
Okay, so of course, approaching it from the aspect where you have to be diverse and inclusive when you're offering these wellness programs, of course, will give an awareness to the employees that you sort of, you're mindful of this aspect. Because when you talk about diversity, it could be gender, age, background. There are various challenges when it comes to health, and it can be very diverse. So just making it very inclusive can also make people engaged, not only to the company, but also to the programs, because you might have a program in a company, but people are not really engaged. So making it very intentional, I think, can also really increase the engagement level, which in turn doesn't lead the company at a loss, maybe if they've invested much on this. So of course, there's also a cost implication that helps. So I'd really say, having a diverse and inclusive wellness program, of course, gives the perspective that, you're a mindful employer and you care over and above just, the normal issues we face, even with mental issues. I believe they're very diverse as well. So approaching it from that aspect, making it very inclusive, not just on a streamlined basis, but I would mention them, but I feel like they're very broad. Makes employees very engaged, and sort of gives you a brand as well, because they speak about it. They talk about where I work. Our wellness program is just not limited to, it's also over and above. So it not only just helps with the engagement within, but it also builds your brand out there. So I'd say that really helps if you approach it from that aspect.
Thank you so much, Shirley. I would love to hear more from Martin as well as to how he at Turaco tries to address the diverse health needs and concerns of his workforce.
Yeah, thanks, Augusta. I basically have the trifecta when it comes to the diversity. Turaco is in 4 countries: Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and Ghana. We have 3 different generations working at Turaco. In addition to that, we have about 6 different nationalities or cultures to work with. So it's a melting pot of a lot of thoughts and understanding around wellness. I think one of the first thing that has really worked for me, leading the people function and thinking about wellness for the entire organization, is having sort of like a global philosophy. Like, there are things that wherever we are, wherever we go to, there are things that we must do. And then having coupling a global philosophy with local practices. So there's some uniqueness to each market, to each country, to each person that we deal with, to each generation. Good examples of this is for instance, with the different countries that we are in, we'll have a global approach where we say we value parental care. So that's a global approach where we say, as part of wellness, is that we value parental care. So anyone who's a parent at Turaco, regardless of where or which country you're in, there's specific days of parental leave that we offer. In some cases, we end up increasing the days in countries where we feel like maybe the legislation offers lesser days. And other ways we look at that is we end up also having a very similar approach across the team. So there's a bit of equity there involved in the diversity. So making sure that it's as equal as we can get it to be across the board. And then coming to local practices, we then start differentiating a little bit. So the privilege here for Turaco is that we work in the insurance space. So we deal a lot with healthcare provision. We deal a lot with healthcare matters when it comes to healthcare financing, healthcare insurance covers, and so we're able to pick out the nuances in each market and make sure that something is protected. Yeah. So some areas might be a few steps behind others, where some forms of illnesses, some forms of well-being or wellness concerns are not covered under traditional insurance providers. We'll either find a way to negotiate for that to be part of the package, or find ways around how to get that product across the team, or that benefit across the team in as equal measure as possible, but also still respecting local practices and figuring out how to make those ones work. And then lastly, across the different nationalities, making sure that we understand what are those health concerns or wellness concerns that differ across different nationalities, across different people of different cultures, and are we thinking about them? Are we offering that care? Thinking about things like staff with families in the team. How are we thinking about their holistic wellness, not just beyond them as an individual, but for their dependents or their family? A happy employee, a healthy employee is healthy when the family is healthy as well. They're engaged and they don't have to worry too much about the health of the rest of their family. So making sure that we are looking at it at a global level and providing local practices that sort of fix any issues that might come with providing these wellness programs to the team. And then just to wind it up, I would say diversity allows for us to learn new things. One of the things that we've picked up is, for instance, when offering wellness programs, is that some areas have more generous benefits around wellness. They're able to offer things that are more generous. For example, in some countries, mental health is considered a concern that you can take a day off. In some jurisdictions, it's not. We have issues like period pain. That's something that someone is allowed to take a day off, or take a day off and feel better. Those things are not available everywhere. So it's learning from one market and applying it to others. A good example is for us, our what we traditionally call a sick leave is largely a wellness or healthcare or health days off. Yeah, so we offer more than is required legally, and then it's applied across multiple things, not just something that took you to hospital. You don't have to have gone to hospital for you to be unwell. It could be you are just not feeling up to it that day, and you should be able to take a health day off. So those are some of the things that we've been able to learn just by making sure that our wellness programs are diverse and inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martin, on this perspective of the global universal needs as opposed to kind of catering to local specific groups. That actually ties in very well to my next question, which is to Yulia. Yulia, given your focus in women's healthcare, which is, of course, a very specific group, but also, women work in essentially every workforce. So can you discuss the specific challenges that women may face in the workplace and how wellness programs can be tailored to those needs?
Sure. I would like to argue, though, that diversity, when it comes to wellness programs and designing them and implementing them, diversity cannot just be a lens. It has to be at the core of that. Because wellness by definition is something that makes an individual happier, more productive, more engaged. And so without a fully personalized approach, no wellness program would work and bring results. And of course, women as a group is very important, probably one of the most important aspects of diversity, because women make up at least 50% of the workforce, and in some companies, a lot more than that. And so the specific challenges when it comes to women's healthcare and women's wellness issues at the workplace are to do with some stages in life and conditions that women face and men don't. So for example, pregnancy and the associated return to work and transition to parenting. Menopause, for example, right, that every woman goes through at a stage where they're usually at a very important point in their career. And losing them, for example, would cost a lot to the organizations because they would usually be in very critical senior positions at that point. And data show that I think around a third of women who go through menopause consider leaving their jobs. Or infertility, for instance, right? Or PCOS that also have very significant mental health implications directly related to the workplace and how productive women can be. And so this means that for that 50% of your workforce, tailored solution and understanding what those challenges are and offering benefits and programs that specifically address those are really critical. The other challenge here is that a lot of those women-specific challenges and problems are very stigmatized. From even pregnancy or contraception, menopause is very, very stigmatized in Kenya and globally. And so as an HR leader, you don't just have to design the program, but you also have to fight that stigma, which can be really, really difficult, especially in some settings and in some cultures. And so here, some of the success stories that we see have a lot of commitment from the HR teams, but also look beyond just wellness and just healthcare again, to fight that stigma and really improve access of whatever women focused healthcare or wellness programs you have. And some of the things here that can work are, for example, again, manager training, right? Are your managers trained on how to support women who return from pregnancy to work? Are they equipped with the tools to support smooth transition? Are there safe channels within your organization where women can talk about issues around menopause, for instance? Do you have champions, women's healthcare champions in your organization that can also become conversation partners and promote the use of some of those educational tools? In general, content and education is also very important and can be very, very effective, particularly when it comes to issues that are really under-researched and understudied, like menopause. So even if you have the best healthcare cover, we see that very few gynecologists are actually comfortable speaking to women about menopause and offering them solutions. So it's really important to go beyond just the doctor's office again and see what are the educational tools and external and internal support tools that you can actually offer to women. And having said that all, it's definitely an area that probably has the highest ROI even just from the fact that women are a really important contributor to the workforce.
Thank you so much, Yulia, on those insights. And that leads us to our last theme, which has been, of course, discussed by all of you, but is actually implementation of the wellness program. So what I'm sure all of the HR leaders are really here for. And so Shirley, as the HR master, can you tell us more about how wellness-based healthcare strategies can be seamlessly integrated into existing employee benefit programs?
Okay, I don't know why I feel like I had addressed that, but how I think it can be seamlessly integrated into employee benefits, of course, is making it part of an employee package. That's when I said it should be a basic need. So how it should be seamlessly integrated, first of all, of course, it comes from from where it all begins. When a company is planning their year, the budgets, etc. So it's intentionally saying that, this year we'll have to integrate a wellness program, etc. for these reasons. And then aside from that, it's also updating the policies to accommodate this, and also to integrate culture. I love the way Yulia talked about stigma. Yes, because I feel like it's a big thing in Kenya, especially mental health. So when leaders are intentional about integrating it into the processes and policies, I feel like it's totally takes care of that. So I feel like just being intentional about it from the beginning to the end, when planning for the year, when planning on HR processes, is how it can be integrated.
Thank you again, Shirley. So, Yulia, I would love to hear more about some of the challenges that you've heard companies you've worked with face when trying to implement wellness programs, and especially prevention-based wellness programs, and how they've been able to overcome them.
Sure. We've seen a lot of challenges, maybe just to cover a few most common ones. So one common gap that we've seen is lack of alignment with the rest of the management team, where the HR team would design and implement the program, but then not invest enough in alignment with the rest of the management team, educate them around how to navigate that program with their teams, what it means for their day-to-day work, their schedule, as well as not really explaining properly how it can help their business goals and the business goals of their specific function. And so what that lack of alignment leads to is that then the program just gets stuck somewhere, not really championed by the management, and then it results in poor engagement from the rest of the organization. Another challenge that is also quite common and quite concerning is when the wellness program is not aligned or even contradicts the company culture. So for example, you can implement the best looking family benefit program or women's healthcare program, but then you know that you still have an issue with, for instance, sexual harassment or gender-based microaggressions in some of your departments. And so that disconnect is going to kill your wellness program. So it's really important to see what are the changes in your culture, what are the issues in your culture you need to address that are aligned with what you want to achieve with your wellness program. And that's really quite common. And then the last gap that we we see companies face and HR teams face is the actual access. So, you can get a really comprehensive healthcare insurance cover, for instance. But when it comes to using it, you realize that there's actually limited access to, primary care providers, for instance, in your area, or you have a mental health benefit that can cover therapy sessions, but then you can't really get access to the specialists. So here, what we've seen companies do to overcome that is to really invest in onboarding. So if you bring an insurance on board or a healthcare provider, really making sure that you understand what the access will look like, and then have a very comprehensive onboarding for the whole team, which then helps your team navigate the actual program and benefits.
Thank you, Yulia. That leads us to our last question, which is for Martin. And Martin, we have seen the rise of remote working in a lot of these companies. So I wanted to hear more from you on how companies can ensure they're still emphasizing wellness programs when employees are not actually in a physical office.
Yeah, I must agree with you, Augusta, with remote working introduces another level of complexity. From my own personal experience, especially from around 2020 when remote working became very big, one of the things that was an immediate aftershock of people working remotely was benefits around wellness were very difficult to extend to people who are working from home. Because with wellness benefits, for the most part, they were in situ. They were things that you did at the office. Maybe it's having those training sessions. Maybe it's having wellness sessions or wellness programs or wellness benefits that only work while you're in the office. Even the more interesting ones like Zumba and having things like gym activities, all those happened in person. So whenever immediately people moved to remote working, there was a huge drop. Now the takeaway for me there was how do you get back to people feeling good, and one of the ways was and one of the ways you need to keep doing is checking in on people. Yeah, so you want to constantly check in on the people you're working with on your team. It needs not feel like you're checking in on whether somebody's working, but rather you're doing a really casual check on how they're feeling. So your first question when you're checking in with someone is not how is work going or how is this project going or how is this task going. It's rather how are you doing? How is it working from home? The other thing is now that restrictions around working in person have since relaxed, it's my biggest encouragement to other HR leaders is always to consider hybrid as a next step. Coming back to the office partially. With remote work, we've identified this benefit of not necessarily needing to be in person all the time, but I think there's a benefit with being in person sometimes. Yeah, there's benefit in community, there's benefit in being together, and surfacing issues is easier when you're together. So consider hybrid working as another quick solution to breaking that distance. And then lastly, of course, provide solutions that are versatile, digital, a combination of digital and in-person, provide solutions that can be reached out by everyone wherever they are, if they're traveling, if they're working from anywhere, that they can be easily utilized. And the outcome of that is a team that people who feel in touch with their companies even when they're not at the office. Thanks, Augusta.
Thank you, Martin. What a very insightful way to end our last theme. And now I just have one last question for all three of you. Rapid fire, we don't have too much time left, but in maybe 30 seconds, how do you envision the future of workplace healthcare? So maybe Yulia, you could start.
Of course, we think about this every day at Cliniva, so I have a lot to say, but I'll try to be brief. So I can think of 5 things. One is that it will be really holistic, where mental health will not be a complement, but will be at the core of the workplace wellness. So that's one. Second one is that it will be fully integrated. So not something where you have the office or you're working from home and then you have a yoga class and then you have a doctor's appointment, but really seamlessly integrated into your workflow. So for example, you're having a Zoom meeting with a customer and then there's a pop-up from your mental health app saying, this is a difficult conversation. Remember, some of the stress relief tips that we practiced last week. So really, really integrated, probably with the help of AI. 3, it will be fully personalized. So not just something that fits all, but really, really personalized to the individual. So anyone with any kind of background, gender, age can access the best tools that would make them very productive, very engaged, and very happy. 4 is that it will become a standard tool. So nothing that is more of a luxury, but really a standard tool in the HR toolkit to hire and retain their teams. And then lastly, I would love the wellness, workplace wellness area to move more into the community-based approach rather than individual-based. So we can have solutions that actually make the whole team, the whole communities more productive, happier, more interconnected, and not just leave it at the level of one individual and one employee.
Thank you so much, Yulia. Maybe would someone like to go next?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, happy to go next. And for me, the future of it is, I would probably summarize it in two ways. It's going to be affordable and accessible. And here I'll be speaking up on behalf of Turaco and just mirror the kind of products that we are building at Turaco, which is more or less making sure that we are able to provide healthcare and health wellness and overall risk and insurance products for the mass market. So that means that employer who has more than 1,000 staff members and is worried about what's wellness for an organization of 1,000+ people. One of the things I feel confident about is that things are going to get much more affordable, much more accessible through technology, through companies that are thinking about inclusive insurance that goes beyond just providing really what we have right now in the market is sometimes can feel a bit expensive for very large organizations. So a future where there is inclusive healthcare or wellness programs and benefits that allow for all companies of all sizes, of all staff sizes to provide something. And by accessibility, I speak to technology, I speak to the ease of access with things, with being able to access a doctor quickly on phone through an app or something like that. So that's the future I see.
Thank you, Martin. And that sounds like a great future. Shirley, of course, I would love to hear from you and your insights last to round us off.
Yeah, sure. When I think about the future of healthcare, I think about it being very data-driven and AI integrated. I think about it really keeping tabs on habits of not only employees, but also organizations. I see a future where healthcare is very, very, of course, AI integrated, technology driven, remote driven. I see a future, how Yulia said, integrated, where mental, physical, and emotional is a whole package and in a wellness program. So I see also a future where it's going to be very affordable because there are very many solutions that are coming up and ecosystems that are being built to help with this. So I'd say that is how I envision the future of healthcare.
Wonderful points, Shirley. Thank you very much for that last answer. It looks like we've kind of run out of time now, but I would like to thank our wonderful speakers so much for their insights today. And thank you all in our audience for listening, for taking the time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.